Hi everyone, today is October 20th, 2018, and this is the Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. My name is GreenRanger.
And I'm DeckTech.
And a ton of stuff is going on in Duel Links. Konami has kind of shifted gears and became like a villain face turn in that they started giving people a lot of gems for different events. And another thing they're trying to correct now is fixing the meta. So one thing that they're doing is the new balance changes. There are already this balance changes to 2 skills, and then the forbidden limited, semi-limited list is also going to be updated in a few days. The structured deck with the Blue Eyes cards came out early last week, and also there is going to be a new mini box on Monday. That along with Zane's events with new Cyberdark cards. So there is a lot of stuff going on in the game right now.
Changes.
Oh, that is. There are changes. Yeah, I can't think of another song right now.
That wasn't in the notes. I didn't warn you. That was just happening.
I mean, I know a lot of David Bowie songs, but I can't think right now. So, all right, what's up? What's going
on? Just singing on a podcast. This week was not super productive for me in the Duel World. I had a really busy week at work. Also, my other extracurricular love, Hearthstone, as you all know. I went to the seasonal championships, and I was like an official press person for that, which was pretty cool. So I got some interviews and stuff, but it's like if you take interviews and then you do nothing with them, then they're not going to give you interviews next time. So I've been trying to get like articles out based on those interviews, but like I said, I was already busy at work, so I basically wasn't really able to touch the game very much. I didn't really finish the last event as much as I'd want to, and so we finished up that thing that I was working on, shipped at like the afternoon yesterday on Friday. So now I have time, gonna jump back in, see what's going on with all these changes, but not too much to update in the past week. I have the Doom Dogs with me today too, so we're going to have a throwback show where there might or might not be some barking.
You'll wake me up, that'll be good.
There we go.
And bite me in the hand virtually.
Classic Doom Dogs.
Oh.
How about you? How was your week? How was your retreat?
Right, yeah, so I went to upstate New York, various towns like Rhinebeck, Hyde Park. Hyde Park is where FDR was born. His house is there or something. But yeah, I had to work for like 2 or 3 days, so I didn't even get to play those days. Or I got to my hotel room and I was too tired and fell asleep with the phone on or something. I don't know what happened, but barely finished the last event. I did play 5 PvP games this week. I finished my 5th one this morning, and I made it to Legend 2 there, so I guess the meta's a little easier now with some of the nerfs, but you still see a lot of the same decks. I think I played all Masked Heroes in the 5 games. Four out of the 5 were probably Masked Heroes. So. I'm not really... I might beat most of them, but I guess I might wait till the nerfs to play more things. And Zane, I am somewhere in the 2 million point range, and he has given me none of the new cards. I've only gotten the new cards through them giving it to me for me ranking to certain points. He's just giving me a gold and the cards I already have. So,
yeah,
not too encouraging.
I always thought it was a little weird that they kind of added new things for you to chase without making them, I don't know, without accounting for the things you already have. Because most events I end up with like 17 of one of the cards because it was, we had it last time and then I just kept getting it. And that, like you said, that is very frustrating. So I think if I were doing it, I would probably secretly weight it so that it helped you kind of even out a little bit, so you mostly got newer cards if you're someone who did the last one, but I don't know. They have to look at their margins and stuff, I guess.
I don't know how difficult micro adjustments are. I guess doing it catering it for every single player, and there's probably a way to do it that's pretty easy, but It's all about
Yeah,
getting buy-in to do it, I guess.
right. And then there's also just the whole thing that they don't actually want us to be farming it. It's kind of like
Yeah.
they just allow us to, I guess.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
I kind of split this one. I did some of them just dueling with the multiplier, and it's the same thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, I also, because of my schedule and stuff, I will often just kind of end an event with extra keys or whatever at the end of it. So that's what I might end up doing, where because farming takes 3 times as long as a
Yeah.
regular duel, so um, that might end up how I end up doing the end of it. But I just barely started farming them, so we're gonna talk a little bit more about that later.
Right. So hopefully he gives us the stuff that play with maybe. All right. Meta Weekly 42. This is this week in esports. Um, so this is a very interesting one to look at because they shifted back to the one deck, 5 card side deck. I think that's because it's hard for people to come up with 2 new decks because enforced the new limit list and also the skill changes. So I guess you can't use those 2 skills, and the limit list is preemptively enforced. So it's going to be 1 deck each. And we see some risers and fallers. Silent Magician are 3 in the top 16, though they did not crack the top 4, it appears. Blue Eyes, Gladiator Beasts are also, there's 2 each in the top 16. No Amazon is to be seen, and only 1 for hire. So it seems like the changes would have an impact on the meta, as predicted.
Yeah,
All right.
want to talk about the specific decks?
Yeah. The winners? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Skill Shot, first place, Balanced Masked Hero. So Masked Hero got a small nerf. We'll talk about the small nerf later. But there are some general nerfs about cards they use, like Treacherous Trap Hole, Hey True Need, cards they like a lot. And this kind of makes this deck fall into balance. They use Shinzeng Hu, which is, I guess, a substitute for Hey True Need. It's interesting, Vision Hero Vion is on the limit list, and there is no polymerization in this deck. So Vision Hero Vion exists only to dump the Celestial. No more fusion support for this.
That is interesting. I didn't catch that. Huh. Okay.
Cool. Second place, All Day, Sealed Tombs Vampires. This is a 20-card vampire deck, and they can't use Cyber Style anymore, but if, in the tournament setting, that's kind of null because they do like using Sealed Tombs instead, so here is a Sealed Tombs Vampire deck.
Yeah, we've also seen Bandit,
Right.
and probably a couple other skills as well. I don't know. I could see Switcheroo or whatever working too. So vampires definitely were one of the ones that were not as hit as hard, and this looks pretty similar to what we were already seeing before.
Yeah, almost. Black Jesus, third place. This is the new Blue Eyes deck that uses the Arcana skill, a trick up the sleeve. And I guess I can explain how this works. This is pretty cheap because you only spend $3.99 on this because you buy the structure deck once with gems, and then you buy it a second time, and you do that to get 3 copies of Dragon Spirit of White and also Bingo Machine Go. And Trick Up the Sleeve basically works to get the Cosmo Brain. That's the only spellcaster that's level 7. And once you get that card out, you're shuffling Blue Eyes into the graveyard, you're getting them from the deck, you're using Silver Cry, Cosmo Brain becomes 3,100. It becomes a huge force. So you only have to buy that set 2 times to make this deck.
Yeah, looks cool. I might end up picking this up. We were talking about it before the show. Because of the changes, I no longer have one of the main meta decks, and I've heard some people talking about how this might end up being one. Plus, I just love playing with the graveyard and giant monsters and stuff. So this seems like maybe where I'll end up going.
It seems a lot better than Red Eye Zombie was in terms of resurrection, and of course, Blue Eyes is always better than Red Eyes in attack wise. So
yeah,
as synchros too. So that's something.
There you go.
Third place, Yami Maya. This is kind of the old vampire deck, Sealed Tombs. It's messy. It's got 21 cards. It's got a Grimson. It's got a Vampire's Desire. This is the throwback version of Vampires.
There you go. It's got a double magical arm bind in the sideboard. You don't see those often, but I guess when you have a deck that can flood the board like Vampires do, it makes a little bit of sense. Like we talked about, they don't have to change too much with the changes. One thing that I thought was interesting, because of the way that they're doing the banned and restricted stuff, or forbidden, whatever, limited, semi-limited, they allow you to have more than the limited or semi-limited amount, so long as there's only the limited or semi-limited amount within your deck at any given time. So basically, that is to say that you can have, this has 2 econs and a Hey Trunade in the sideboard, and we saw that with the other ones too, where they have a couple of them have like 3 copies of something that's limited to 2, and that's okay because you can just sub them out, but you have to specifically sub out that card. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way of doing it. In other games that I've played, that's not the case. If something's limited or forbidden or whatever equivalent, then it's like you combine your deck and your sideboard. So I thought that was interesting.
Right. Some other interesting decks to note. They're not really interesting, but they're old decks that came back. Top 8 KW Row, Tie That Binds Aliens. This is almost identical to the alien deck that existed early this year, except there's a new card in Widespread Ruin, which isn't really old, but came out before they were good. So this is almost identical to what aliens were.
Yeah, and the Widespread Ruins seem to be kind of in the place of the Brainwashing Beams, which are in the sideboard, but otherwise, like you said, it's like the exact same deck, kind of.
And then Dulling with top 8 Gladiator Beasts, Sealed Tombs Gladiators. This looks a bit different. We've got the newer ones in Gladiator Beast Darius and Equesti. You've got fewer copies of Bestiari and Murmillo as well. You've got all your good trap cards, and nothing like Draining Shield or those cards that they used to run.
Yeah, this is... I kind of like this a little more because it's not just bringing back an old deck, but it's kind of updating it a little bit. We've got a couple new cards. It feels like a little bit of a different deck. So that's kind of cool. That feels more exciting to me than the aliens.
The aliens are for lazy people like me who could just queue up the same deck and just add 2 cards.
Yeah, it's still like in your little reservoir of decks.
Yeah. Alright, so the big news changes are the balance changes. The dual skill balance changes are currently active. So let's talk about those. Cyberstyle. I think we all saw this coming. Cyberstyle was very strong. Aliens were a top-tier deck, are a top-tier deck. And now Cyberstyle, you can't use the Proto-Dragons for regular tribute summoning. They can only be used for the fusion of the Cyber End Dragon. Cyber End Dragon. And, that's the main change. And the main appeal for Cyberstyle in Vampires and UAs was the ramp. They had some use in attacking and defending every so often, but the ramp was the most important factor, I think.
Yeah, I fully agree. What it seemed like what the skill was intended to do was to allow you to do the fusion summon, and then they somehow just didn't consider that it would just be used as a ramp, even though that seems pretty obvious to me. But as soon as the skill came out, people were like, oh, this is just a better 3-star demotion. Yeah. And so, obviously 3-star demotion got nerfed, so it kind of seemed like it was just a matter of time before Cyberstyle would probably be touched at some point.
And it's kind of obvious here, but I think UAs are going to struggle without it more than Vampires. Vampires, you can get the Retainer and Familiar out from the graveyard. UAs don't do that, so you're going to need their own ramp cards, like the Vassal, like a Mithra the Vassal or something to help them, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a very good assessment. We didn't see too many UAs, so it seems like they're hurting.
And finally, Life Cost 0 finally got nerfed. They can only get one monster, I believe. I think that's the change. Instead of unlimited monsters at turn, which should have happened all along. They stole too many games. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, and just to clarify, what it is your life costs 0 the next time that you would pay life, or like once per duel. So when he says get monsters, he's specifically talking about with Cyberstein, because you can only use the ability once. Maybe they'll switch to a mode where like they're gaining life instead of taking damage, and then they just get to 6,000 life, or I guess whatever 5,500 life, and then they activate it once, and then they activate their skill to activate it another time. I don't know.
Yeah. There are cards that reverse the damage or something, and you heal yourself.
Yeah. So this one's interesting because it wasn't a power level change. It was a this isn't fun to play against change. I think it got a lot more popular because they added more cards with Zane that do damage to yourself, and it's supposed to be a downside. But with this skill being so powerful when it gets off, for those decks, it was just an upside to add those, and they had realized that it was kind of not fun to play against, and also limiting their design space a little bit, where they couldn't print more cards that hurt yourself or that can be grabbed by Cyberstein, because if they do that, then this just becomes, every time they do that, it becomes easier and stronger, and then at some point it will become both unfun to play against and a power level issue, and they definitely don't want that. So they kind of nip this, I don't say in the bud, because like you said, it has been maybe a long time coming, but they got to it before it was necessarily like a must change, because they kind of saw where things were heading.
Yeah, design space aspect you bring up is very interesting. In other games, it would be design space preventing them from making new cards. In this game, it would be from them bringing in cards we already know exist into the game. So that yeah, there you go.
Yeah. One thing on the news that I wanted to throw in, that I forgot to put into the show notes, by the way. Probably should have done it in esports, but we're going to do it now. Breaking news, Duel Links Pro is back. They're going to start doing their tournaments again. There's one going on probably right around the time that we are going to be posting this. It's a couple hours from now, so we're obviously not reporting on it yet because it hasn't happened yet, but next week we'll be talking about it.
Cool. Thanks for pointing that out. The Forbidden Restricted list would be active on Monday. I believe that's the 22nd. Not sure what time it is. It would probably be early, right? Because they usually do it at 1 or 2. Here, they do 1 or 2.
Yeah. I will often... So usually when they turn the game off for maintenance and stuff, that's at like 10 o'clock at night my time. And then usually when I wake up, there's new content. So it might be like that, or it might end up being a little later in the day, like you said, like 10 o'clock or something my time. You said 1, something like that. So I don't know. We don't have a specific schedule on it, but it'll be interesting to see how they handle that as well. If it's not just... Normally, if I just like wake up and it's like, oh, the game's different today. This feels normal to me because I just woke up and now it's a different game. But if they do it in the middle of the day, then that's kind of weird for me. But also that's super arbitrary because no matter when they do it, it would be in the middle of the day for someone. So I don't know. My timing just kind of ends up working where I tend to go to bed right around the time, right after they go to maintenance. Usually what happens is I open up my phone and I'm like, all right, I'll play some games before maintenance. But anyway, that doesn't matter. And then when I wake up, it's a different game. So that's kind of cool, but whatever.
So 2 cards are being added to the limit list, which means you can only have 1 of the limit list cards. And then 4 cards are being put onto the semi-limit list, where you could put 2. And the semi-limit list is, I think, more important because it's more crowded, and then there's econ in it. So there's a lot to consider here.
Yes. Yeah, I think... Well, okay, so the limited to ones are Vision Hero Vion and Amazoness Onslaught. And as the Amazoness player, I'll tell you that this whole combined thing is, and plus the previous nerfs to Amazonas, it makes a lot of sense to me that there were no Amazonas in the weekly, because at this point they have very drastically reduced both the potency and the consistency of the deck. It's just harder to get your onslaughts out. Pretty much the whole deck is reliant on onslaughts, and now it's really easy. The whole deck is pretty much dead if they just draw one Cosmic Cyclone or something. Yeah. So I think it's pretty easy to say, like, okay, Onslaught or Amazonas are now probably dead, maybe like a tier 3, tier 4 thing.
Yeah. The Cosmic Cyclone just gets it. The Masked Heroes, let's talk about Vision Hero Vion. Masked Heroes, this card was limited to 1, which is kind of weird because it's not the most powerful card in the deck, but it always ensured that you got your dangerous Destiny Hero dangerous in defense mode or something, and that helped deck thinning. That helped you put a big body on the board early, and that there is something to it, and it could also be putting the deck in check so it doesn't become too powerful when there were no Amazonas, for example, or no for hires. So it could be a preemptive nerf, but as we saw, the person got first place in the tournament with Vision Hero Vion in the deck, but for a different purpose. So I guess the fusion aspect is gone of Vision Hero Vion.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you said, it doesn't really seem to target something specifically like the Amazonas change does, but making it a little bit weaker of a deck is kind of, I prefer the soft touch usually in terms of nerfs, so I guess that's kind of cool. I've never played the deck, so it's a little hard for me to fully grasp it. But I do like that it got first place because I was talking about how, like, oh, I still have to buy it. Like, I'm this close to getting the deck, and then I was kind of bummed because it felt like there was no reason for me to do that. So my previous efforts had been wasted. But now maybe I could try it out even after the nerfs, and then I won't be so far behind in terms of, like, learning how to play it, because everyone will be learning a little bit at least.
Well, let me get back to Onslaught. So I had the idea where it was either Onslaught or Endless Trap Hell. Which one would you have preferred to have nerfed? Endless Trap Hell or Onslaught?
So they're kind of slightly different nerfs, and obviously, of course, but Onslaught means we're nerfing Amazonas, whereas Endless Trap Hell means you're hitting Amazonas and stall decks and I don't know, maybe some other type of thing. I think that I would have rather them hit Endless Trap Hell because I hate the stall decks and I love my Amazonas, but that kind of seems a little I don't know, self-centered and greedy. So it makes some sense that they went this route instead, because Amazonas was specifically the problem and the stall decks weren't, at least not recently. And also, it's interesting. It would be interesting to nerf Endless Trap Hell when you just added 2 skills that kind of mirror it.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think maybe that's why they didn't, because it just kind of would seem a little out of place at that point.
The Princess semi-limited to 2. I think the Onslaught kind of overshadows this, right? Like, it hits a lot harder than the Princess, because if there's no Onslaughts, why would you need the Princess, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. When you go down, well, so if they had left, wasn't Onslaught was at 2 before,
2,
right?
Yeah, now it went to 1, yeah.
Yeah, so what they did is they basically made the deck still playable, but substantially worse. Because if they had made Onslaught stay at 2, then it would hurt you more than this. So that's kind of interesting. By making Onslaught more limited, they're actually allowing you more overall access to it based on how their system works, and based on the fact that they wanted to nerf the deck a little bit at least. So that's a little bit of an interesting little twist, but I agree that Onslaught being down to 1 hurts more than Princess down to 2, because Princess down to 2, you could still use things like My Monster cards to try to get her. You could use, I don't know, like downbeats and various other things to try to search her out. And 2 isn't nearly as bad as 1 in terms of, like we were talking about, you can just get rid of the Cosmic Cyclone, or you can get rid of the 1 with Cosmic Cyclone, so it's a lot more fragile that way without any of the redundancy. But really, to me, it just feels like it's the double whammy of both of them at the same time that just kind of kills the deck. Because if we only limited Princess, then we could switch around this. If we only limited the Onslaught, I think that would hurt more. And I'm not sure if the deck would exist if we still had 3 Princesses and 1 Onslaught. But with the 2 and the 1, then it seems like it's kind of dead.
Wiz Sage for Hire is semi-limited to 2. I think this is the first time for hires. No, they got hit with Donpa last time. So now there's a crowded list with Econ, Donpa, and Wiz, and you can only take 2. Kind of like building a menu, sort of. I think this one hurts a lot. Wiz is often the card that wins them the game. Now they have to pick a specific route. You could just go all Wiz, you could go all Donpa, but I think what made Fur Hires good was just the combination of them, and now they can't do that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely like a combination of things, and it's interesting because you have beat, so you can still search out the things you want. So it doesn't hurt as much as it could hurt other decks to have something like this happen to them. But just when you hit so many pieces of the deck, it's like, okay, like, all right, this is a little limited, this is a little limited, that it just kind of becomes harder to build it. And obviously, like you said, it just becomes a little bit less consistent because you're not always going to have beat to search it out. Or maybe you would have preferred to have one of them in your hand because you wanted both and you only can search out one, or, whatever. So I think that this kind of also feels like a slightly lighter touch, at least compared to the Amazoness. But Amazoness got killed, so I guess kind of everything is a lighter touch compared to that.
A True Nade limited to 2, semi-limited to 2. This hits a bunch of stuff, mostly Masked Heroes, Fur Hires, Vampires, UAs. I guess it's just to make it compete with Econ, and also introduce some other niche back row removal. So I guess things like Shinzeng Hu or Fire Formation Gyaku could come in.
Yeah, or anti-magic arrows you also wrote in here. I think the main problem with Hey True Nade is usually you play it and then win, because that's how the card is kind of designed to work. And so it's another one of those kind of feels bad cards, like the life cost 0 thing, where even if it's not the strongest card, and I don't know if it is or not, it seems like a pretty strong card, but it's also just like that card that has bad feelings to it, because it makes the opponent feel helpless a little bit, especially when you're getting rid of cards like Onslaught, which would have been one of the better answers, that you can just flip up and then you still have your answer to whatever's about to happen to you. So this seems like a good change to go with the other ones. It kind of matches the same theme and makes sense in the context of the other ones too.
And finally, Treacherous Trap Hole semi-limited to 2. I think this one will be also coming as well because it was used so much. Often a deck would have no traps except for 1 or 2 Treacherous Trap Hole. And this hits a lot of stuff like Amazon's for higher Masked Heroes. Same deal where they put into the crowded semi-limit list.
Yeah, this one's really cool because, like you said, you only really ran 1, maybe 2 Treacherous Trap Hole anyway. So if you look at this just on its own, you're like, okay, this isn't a nerf at all, because you would never use 3 anyway in almost any deck. But like you said, the difference is that this makes your other deck building decisions tougher. You're like, okay, if I decide to run Treacherous Trap Hole, then I can't run these other powerful cards. Or in certain decks, it's like, okay, well, I need to run my 2 Wiz, I guess, maybe, or we said Wiz and Dampa or something, but you're like, I need to run these core cards for the deck, so I guess that means this deck can't run Treacherous Trap Hole. And so it's a really cool way, I guess, not so much to specifically limit the power of the card, but just to limit its prevalence. In the meta, now every deck can't run it because some decks need to use those slots on other stuff. And I think that's pretty cool, because this card is yet another one of those like blowout cards where just usually when you get it off and your opponent does not, then you win, and vice versa, because it's just such a powerful tempo swing.
That wraps up all the changes, and I think it's safe to say that the one-turn kill meta that we've had, all through the summer and into the early fall now is going to be over. I think we're going to have longer games maybe, and a more fun meta, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting to see kind of the ebb and flow of the game. Like, they obviously really sped it up when they brought GX in, and then they could have, like, the whole thing about synchros was that it was gotta go fast, and I guess they could have decided to continue that trend and keep things fast, but it seems like instead they chose to kind of give us the slower synchros, and then now they're making these other changes to kind of slow down the game a little bit. And I personally think it's for the better. I thought that the game was a little bit more fun when back before things got completely crazy, and there was like a little bit more of give and take between you and your opponent. That back and forth, even though it's still kind of a speed duel format, you're still only talking about like 5 turns, but 5 turns is better than 1 turn, or know. So seems like overall good changes. Looking forward to seeing how the game feels after they all go live.
Unless Yubel becomes top dog and then we play till we have no cards.
Yeah, that would be annoying, but there's plenty of ways to at least counter Yubel, I think.
All right. So the new Structured Deck EX came out, the White Dragon of Legend. And as we said, Konami is doing things to make things feel better about gems. We could finally buy this one with gems instead of real money like we predicted last week. We expected this to be only money, but now we could buy it with 1,000 gems and $3.99 for the second. And luckily you only need 2, so think about how much $3.99 is worth versus winning a lot of games. So we're going to gloss over some of these cards, but we're going to talk about the important ones more. The Blue Eye Solid Dragon is not one of the important cards. It's more of an accessory card. You've got an 8-star monster with 2,500, 2,000, which isn't very good. It does negate a monster's effects, and it does tutor out a Blue Eyes from the deck, but it's kind of clunky. I think you can only have so many cards in a deck, and when you just have this card and nothing else, it's not the most useful card.
Okay, yeah.
So talk about
glossing over that guy.
Let's talk about one that's actually good. The Dragon Spirit of White. 8-star dragon, 25 2,000, which is the same stats as the previous card. This card is always treated as a Blue Eyes card. This card is treated as a normal monster while in the hand or graveyard. While this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one spell or trap your opponent controls and banish it. If your opponent controls a monster, you can quick effect tribute this card, special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand. So the key is this is considered a normal monster in the hand or graveyard, which lets you cheat it out for free with various cards. It has a free Cosmic Cyclone on it, so when it's played, you get a Cosmic Cyclone effect off, and you get to quick effect a Blue Eyes from your hand. So there's just a ton of stuff going on, which makes this a really good card.
Yeah, I like it. It kind of protects itself with the Cosmic Cyclone effect, and then it's just kind of a beefy dude that you can get out fairly easily. So, good stuff.
Cosmo Brain. This is kind of the card that also makes it all work. 7-star Spellcaster. 1,500, 2,450. Cannot be normal summoned or set. Must be special summoned by sending one non-effect monster from your hand or face up on the field to the graveyard. This card gains attack equal to the level of the monster times 200. You can tribute one effect monster. Special summon one normal monster from your hand or deck. You can use this effect once per turn. So you tribute a non-effect monster, which is either the Blue Eyes or the previously mentioned Dragon Spirit of White. So since they're both normal. And then it gains 1,600 attack because they have 8 stars. So it becomes 3,100. And then you could tribute another effect monster and basically summon a Blue Eyes from your deck, your hand or deck. So this makes it all work. And of course, trick up the sleeve. allows you to draw a spellcaster, and this is the spellcaster.
Nice. A dark spellcaster, if anyone, like, it doesn't matter because it's the only one in this deck, but it could matter.
Yeah. And you only need one, so you don't need... I mean, you're buying this set twice for other cards, but you only play one of these cards, so... Hieratics. I don't really feel like talking about the Hieratics, but there's 3 of them here.
There you go.
They all have that ability where if they're targeted, they special summon a 0/0 copy of another one. That's their thing. Maybe that's relevant sometimes.
And, sorry, did you talk about the bingo?
Nope.
Okay.
This one's just interesting for no reason. Mechanical Arc Fiend. It has the highest defense of any 4-star monster with no downside. So now we have a 4-star 2100.
There you go. Hey, I really like the art on this guy too, so...
Yeah. That's
cool.
Rider of Stormwinds is a tuner, so there's another tuner here. It fits with the Blue Eyes turning into Azure, because it's 1 + 8 = 9. So there's another tuner. The Bingo Machine. Bingo Machine Go with 3 exclamation points. Normal spell. Reveal 3 cards from your deck that each meets at least one criteria listed below. Your opponent randomly picks one for you to add to your hand. The rest gets shuffled into your deck. You can only activate 1 per turn. So the stipulations are a Blue Eyes monster, a spell trap that specifically lists the card Blue Eyes White Dragon or Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, except for Bingo Machine Go.
Yeah, so I guess it's just kind of essentially a deck thinning, a little bit of a tutor, but not really. So that's cool.
Yep. So those are all the new cards. There are some other filler cards that appear here, but most decks do run 3 Dragon Spirit of Whites and 2 Bingo Machines, so that's why I mentioned you should buy this deck twice if you want to make it into a competitive deck.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Alright. Cyberdark Impact Round 2. You can get Zane if you don't have him already. And also for the first time, you could get 115 gems. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I think it's cool. This was another example of them upping the gem rewards like we were talking about. Making it at least feel a little better, because you open up like the event and there's just a wall of gem rewards there. Obviously 115 is only a little bit more than 2 packs, so it's not like amazing, but it's something.
Right. I was pretty surprised about how there was like a whole wall of gems from the event rewards. So I was pretty excited about that. But whether he actually hit it is another question. You have to fight Zane 60 times, and if he doesn't drop stuff, it's kind of discouraging. So
yeah. Yeah, 60 is a lot. We'll see if I can get there. Maybe that's when you start using the multiplier instead of like trying to just farm him every time, because 60 farms could take forever. I don't know. Getting all kinds of background this time.
I know.
All right.
All right. So let's talk about these cards. So let's talk about the skill, actually, first. Cyberdark Style. It's a draw sense skill. Draw sense skill where you get to add a Cyberdark monster when you lose 1800.
Okay. We, in evaluating this, we got a few more Cyberdark monsters in this set that we're obviously about to talk about. But I'm still not super impressed with any of them. I mean, we're going to go through them one by one, but it just seems like I don't think there's any reason to use this right now.
Cyberdarkness Dragon, 10-star Machine Fusion, 5 Cyberdark effect monsters, 2000. If this is special summoned, you can equip 1 dragon or machine from your graveyard to this card. Gains attack equal to the original attack of the monster equipped to it by this effect. When your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can send 1 equip you control to the graveyard, negate the activation if you do destroy that card. This card is decent on its own, but the cost of a 5 cost fusion is kind of like playing that dragon with 5 heads, so it's kind of hard to do.
Yeah, definitely. 5, yeah, just giving up 5, probably 6 cards because you need something to actually do the fusion is just a huge ask. It's not only like a huge tempo loss, it's also you don't even have that many cards in your hand. You have to build it up over time, so just so much setup to make this card work, and it just doesn't yet.
Cyberdark Cannon. So there's 2 new cards, Cyberdark Cannon and Cyberdark Claw. We previously mentioned how there aren't enough 3-star Dark Dragons, and you would have to use a Hunter Dragon, but these are the 2 cards that are better. Cyberdark Cannon is a 3-star Dragon, Dark, 1600, 800. When this card if this card is sent to the graveyard while equipped to a monster, you can draw a card. You can only use each effect of the following effects once per turn. You can discard 1 card, add 1 machine Cyberdark monster from your deck to your hand. During the damage calculation, if a monster equipped to this card battles, you can send 1 monster from your deck to the graveyard. Basically, you discard this card, and then you tutor out the other monster. You summon that monster, and then this attaches from the graveyard to that card. It becomes a 2400.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
Any of the horn, edge, or keel would make this work. And Cyberdark Claw is the same monster. It has the same stats, but it's not as good. It's sent to the graveyard. If this card is sent to the graveyard while equipped to the monster, you can target 1 Cyberdark in your graveyard, add it to your hand. And then you can use these abilities. You can discard this card and add a Cyberdark spell or trap from your deck. And also, you can send a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. So this one fetches out the spells and the traps rather than the monsters. And that's less important in starting off with a monster of 2400 attack. So
nice. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's kind of less good, but as a whole, so like I was saying kind of at the start, as a whole, I'm not sure that this archetype will really have much of an impact on anything, but it's okay. It's also kind of a parasitic archetype where you specifically need it to play more of them. So even though the certain ones are less good, you would still maybe run them if you're trying to make this work.
And there are multiple ways to farm Zane. As mentioned before, I don't know if he will actually give you the cards, but here's a link with the farming methods. I've been using the Cloudian one. Works okay. Yeah.
I've been... Okay, so I wasn't looking at Duel Links, man. I looked at something else. I have been using the... What was it? Lonely Girl? Sad Girl? I forget what she's called.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And she's been pretty good. I think she's felt like it worked pretty well. I've only done it a couple times, but it seemed like it was a good method as well.
Yeah. All right. Finally, we are going to talk about the new mini box that is coming on Monday, and that is Energy of Bravery. And as expected, it is going to feature new characters, signature monster, Signature Dragon. The Power Tool Dragon isn't exactly a Signature Dragon, but they all hang out together, so I guess this counts. And the set is based on equip cards and archetypes that like equip cards.
All right, so Power Tool Dragon. It is a 7-star Earth synchro monster machine with 2300 and 2500, and the effect is once per turn, you can reveal 3 equipped spell cards from your deck. Then your opponent randomly adds one of them to your hand, and you shuffle the rest back into your deck. If this card would be destroyed while equipped with an equipped spell card, you can send one of those cards to the graveyard instead. So I really like this guy for a couple reasons. One is that it is a 7-star or a level 7 tuner. So we talked about it before, where that's kind of just inherently one of the stronger things to hit, because a lot of the tuners that we have are 3-star, and so you get to run your strong level 4 monsters that you would normally run, and then you can synchro summon this guy more easily. And the effect is really strong insofar, like, if you can get it to work. So the weakness is that you have to run equip cards, which are obviously not so great. We've talked about it a ton of times on this show. But if you can actually find, whatever number that you have to run, 5 or so equip cards to make this work, then it's really strong, because it's obviously getting whatever buff you get from the equip card. And then also it protects itself, because if it would die, it's not even like from an effect. It's just if it would be destroyed, then you get to destroy the equip card instead. So it kind of protects itself, lets you get more value the next turn, because you can activate that first effect again. So I think this card's really solid. Might actually get people to play equip cards.
Yeah, it must be really convincing if you actually said good things about a card, about equip cards.
I know. And it's a synchro, which hasn't shown us that it's good yet either. So there's a lot of downside, but there's a lot of upside here. I like it.
I'm less impressed with this UR. It's called the Buster Whelp of Destruction Swordsman. 1-star Dragon Tuner, 400, 300. It's a light tuner. When this card's normal summoned, you can add 1 Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand, except for Buster Whelp. You can use one of these effects per turn. You can tribute this card, special summon 1 Buster Blader from your hand or graveyard. If this card is in your graveyard, and you control Buster Blader, you can discard 1 Destruction Sword card and special summon this card. So, the only Destruction Swords card is an SR in this set called Destruction Swordsman of Fusion. And that's the only card you're going for. And you have to use Buster Blader to combine with that card. So I think Buster Blader's a 7 or an 8, I forget. But you would basically combine that card with this Whelp, which is a tuner. Otherwise, this is just a light tuner level 1. There's nothing special about it if you're not using Buster Blader.
Yeah, I don't think this guy's very good.
It's just there's 3 URs in this set, and this is the worst one.
Yeah, this is one. I mean, tuners at like any level will always have some consideration, because it's like, well, what do I need it to add up to whatever I'm trying to get out? But the other effects are the real reason why you would run this guy, and there's just not enough synergy yet, at least. Maybe we'll get some in the future, but right now this card is just not good.
And the other UR in this set is Memory of an Adversary. It's a trap card. When an opponent's monster declares an attack, you take damage equal to the attacking monster's attack. If you do, banish that monster. During the end phase of your opponent's next turn, special summon that monster to your side of the field. So this does nothing. This does nothing when you're facing 2 monsters and facing lethal. You're just going to lose. But luckily, there are fewer one-turn kill decks, and this might have a chance. In a 1-monster situation, this is pretty big because you steal the monster. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like this card. Another thing to consider is that you can use it through some sort of, to activate your skill, or maybe there's some way to negate the downside, because there's a ton of various cards in here, and maybe there's a card that says next time that you would activate a trap that hurts yourself, you don't, or I don't know for sure. But basically, I think that there's a lot of potential here. The only downside to that is that there are a lot of very powerful traps in the game right now. And so you have to ask yourself, like, why would I run this over Widespread Ruin or Wall of D or, anything else when you have limited deck slots? And so the answer is that you need a specific reason to do so. And I think that reason will most likely be skill activations in this game. But there could be other reasons, like you really want that ramp effect, I guess, or something. So this is a card. I wouldn't call it a chase card. I think the chase card of the URs is the Power Tool. You buy the set because you want that. or some of the other stuff we're going to talk about here. But this is definitely one of those cards that you would be pretty happy to pull, or at least not upset like the last guy.
That means we're going to get 3 of the whelps before anything else, right?
Well, I'm not going to be restarting, resetting the box.
Alright, let's talk about the SRs. Naturia Leo Drake is a level 9 Beast Synchro, 1 Earth Tuner, and 1 or more non-tuner Earth monsters, 3,000, 1,800. That's all it is. You noticed something about the stars.
I mean, it's a level 9, which is sometimes easier than the 10, like the Gigantic Castle, but it still will probably require you to use 3 monsters. I mean, unless you're going to use a 5-star or something in there, which at that point you're kind of using 3 anyway, because you probably had to tribute to summon it, so it's kind of like an indirect 3. So I'm not sure if it's substantially different from Gigantic Castle in terms of the 9 stars versus 10 stars. What is substantially different is that it can only use Earth monsters. So that's fairly restrictive, but it does have like beast synergy and stuff. So
it's a pretty disappointing pull.
Yeah, this seems like definitely one of the SRs you don't want.
Talk about the next few cards.
Oh yeah, okay. Morphtronic Scopin. It is a microscope that's come to life. It's a light 3-star machine tuner with 800 attack and 1400 defense. The Morphtronics are a Transformer-inspired archetype type in the set where they have a certain effect while they're in attack position and then a different effect while they're in defense position. And they all have pretty low stats like this guy does. So the idea is, I guess, that these effects make it worth playing them in either position. We'll go over the archetypes generally later, but I'm not sure it's worth it. Anyway, this guy. While in attack position, once per turn you can special summon 1 level 4 Morphtronic monster from your hand. Destroy it during the end phase. While in defense position, while this card is in face-up defense position, it is level 4. So, this is pretty much all just a synchro summoning card. I think almost certainly the only use for it that we'll see competitive play is you play it in attack position, immediately summon a level 4. There is at least one I checked, Morphtronic, and then you get rid of both of them to summon a level 7 synchro, or higher if you have something else on the field already as well. And so it's kind of just a 2-in-1, plus it is itself a tuner, so it kind of just can handle a synchro summon more or less all on its own as long as you have the other guy in your hand to pull out with it. Anything to add on that one?
Seems good.
All right. Morphtronic Selphon, Earth level 1, 100 stats. And his effects are, while in attack position once per turn, you can roll a 6-sided die, reveal cards from the top of your deck equal to the roll, and special summon 1 level 4 or lower Morphtronic monster from among them, ignoring its summoning conditions, and then shuffle the rest back into the deck. While in defense position, once per turn, you can roll a 6-sided die, look at cards from the top of your deck equal to the roll, and then return them in the same order. So this one's interesting because the attack position's just obviously better. For some of the other ones, it feels like they want you to choose between attack or defense position. But I guess the downside here is that you're going to get hit in the face because you're playing an attack position 100 attack monster. Again, it's a little bit of a ramp thing because you play it in attack position, then you get to look at the top, I don't know, about 3 cards on average, and summon one if it hits your requirement, which obviously you would build your deck to do that. But overall, I'm not as impressed with this guy. I think it's just pretty much useless. I mean, it requires you to build an entirely Morphtronic deck, and I don't think that we have the tools for that right now. I prefer this other one that you can maybe just slot in and do like a semi-Morphtron theme. And then even when this one works, it kind of really wants you to hit maybe this other tuner guy and then have this guy special summon something else. And so the idea, I guess, is that you can go like get an 8, I guess, in one turn with both of them. But I don't think, I'm not seeing it working out with Selphon. Junk Box. This is another one for the Morphtronics. It is your junk in a box. It's a spell card. Select and special summon one level 4 lower Morphtronic monster from your graveyard, destroyed at the end phase. So again, this is just kind of cheating them out so you can use them. Since they die at the end phase, the whole point is to specifically use them for ramp or for synchro summons. Works really well with the Morphtronics because you can special summon it into attack or defense position, so you can decide which way you want it. I still think, though, like having looked at all of them, there's not a ton of them that you specifically want to get out, so it's a little bit less impressive. It's one of those cards that would be good if the archetype was good, but the archetype doesn't seem that good, so this doesn't seem that good. And finally, Morphtronic Accelerator. It's another spell card. It reads, return one Morphtronic monster from your hand to the deck, then destroy one card on the field and draw one card. So this card is very powerful if you have, if you're playing this archetype. It's not terribly hard to just have one in your hand. You don't have to actually have it in play, so you're not losing tempo there. And then you get to like cycle through them to get exactly the one you wanted, I guess, because you're returning one you don't want, and then you're drawing a card to hopefully get you closer to one you do want, and you get to destroy something on the field. So I think this card is very solid, and if there's any sort of Morphtronic deck, which I don't think there will be, but if there is, this is definitely going to be one of the reasons why and will be in it.
This card reminds me of Psychokinesis. It's just such a good removal that you would just slot 3 of it in just to make it work. So, yeah. Yeah, you would just kind of play suboptimal cards to try to make this work because it's just a really strong card. All right. So there is a card that many are considered broken with the other cards in this deck, and that is the Violon Epsilon. It's an 8-star fairy synchro that requires 1 light tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters. So just the tuner has to be light. 2800, 1200. Equip cards equipped to this card cannot be targeted by cards or effects. Once per turn, you can send 1 equip card equipped to this card to the graveyard to target 1 monster your opponent controls. Destroy that target. So the card that works with this, I'll skip ahead, is Violon Segment. And Violon Segment reads, it's an equip spell, equipped to a Violon monster. It cannot be targeted by the opponent's monster effects or trap effects. If this face-up card on the field is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 Violon spell card from your deck to your hand. So there's a lock. This Epsilon protects this segment. The segment protects the Violon. So neither can be targeted by anything. They have to be destroyed by battle or hit by something that doesn't target, like Widespread Ruin, for example.
Mm-hmm. And hit by battle is going to be fairly tough, maybe not so much if that Blue Eyes deck becomes big, but this is a beefy boy, so there's not a lot that can beat it in battle anyway. Right,
we saw how Wiz 2800 defense, it was very hard to hit through that, and this is in attack mode, so and it can't get targeted to flip it into defense mode or anything like that. It has a weak defense, but you can't be targeted, so there's going to be something tough going on there. And this card itself does a removal every turn. It controls the board every single turn.
Yeah. I think all the signs are pointing towards Sea Stealth Attack coming back as my main deck.
And this also has synergy with Leo's equipment restock skill, which is kind of the Endless Trap Hell version for equips, because you're sending equips to the graveyard, you just get them back with this skill.
Yeah, for sure. And same with obviously the Power Tool. Just, yeah, so it works well with this whole set, which was another thing that I was talking about. Like, we were talking about how that skill was a little weird and out of place at the time, but now that they've added just this whole set, it kind of makes sense, where at the very least it's something you can try. Like, who knows if it'll actually be worth it, but at least now it makes sense as a skill. Maybe the next set will make some sense of the other twin skill.
Yeah, there's going to be a whole field box, probably.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Alright, why don't you take the Scrap Chimera?
Yes. Alright, so the Scrap Chimera, level 4 Earth Beast, 1700, 500. This card cannot be used as Synchro Material Monster except for a Synchro Summon of a Scrap Monster. And all the other Synchro Material Monsters must also be Scrap Monsters. That's worded oddly, but you know what it means. When this card is normal summoned, you can select one Scrap Tuner Monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So the idea, of course, is that you summon this guy, it brings out a Scrap Tuner, and then the two of them combine to make a Scrap Synchro Summon, and it works magically. Unfortunately, the only Scrap Synchro Summon that we get in this set is Atomic Scrap Dragon, which is a rare that, I'll just say it now because it makes sense. It's a level 10, and it requires one Scrap Tuner and 2 or more non-tuner monsters. So you can only do it by a level 3, or by tributing 3 guys. And then the effect on it, it's 3200, 2400, so it's fairly strong, but the effect isn't usually that valuable. Select one card your opponent, or you control, and up to 3 cards in your opponent's graveyard. Destroy your card, and then return the other cards to your opponent's deck. And then when this card is destroyed by your opponent's card and sent to the graveyard, select one non-synchro scrap monster from your graveyard and special summon it. So it replaces itself a little bit, but the effect is like, I'm going to give up my board to give you more tools back in your deck. So obviously there's some times where it's valuable, where you really don't want your opponent to have certain things in their graveyard, so they can't reanimate it or can't get graveyard effects or whatever. But for the most part, the Scrap Dragon just does not really impress me. And so as a result, the Scrap Chimera does not impress me yet. I don't know the archetype in the TCG. I don't know if there's more targets that might be coming. But right now there's no real reason to make this work, even though if it did work, it'd be pretty solid.
The next card is Naturia Butterfly, 3-star Insect Tuner, 500, 1200. Once per turn, when your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can send the top card of your deck to the graveyard and negate that attack. So we saw the card Full Helm Knight see some play because it negated one attack. This one can do it each turn, and it has some synergy with decks that like to discard their own cards. So this is definitely a tuner to consider if you're playing synchros, and it's not a requirement for the Naturia synchro. So it's just it's an Earth tuner, so that matters, I guess.
Yeah, it's one of like the tools that you might want just to have in your toolbox. Not like overtly fitting into anything now, but there's obviously some ways that it can be relevant, so you might want to grab it, or you might just want to wait until it becomes relevant and then grab it.
Destruction Swordsman Fusion, quick play spell that I mentioned before. Fusion summon one fusion monster that lists Buster Blader as material from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or on either side of the field as fusion materials. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send one card from your hand to the graveyard, add this card to your hand. You can use this effect once per turn. So there's only 2 cards that fit this requirement. That is Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, and Dark Paladin. You can kind of use DNA Surgery to turn everyone into a dragon, and that guy becomes huge. Or you could play Dark Paladin in case Noble Knights become really good. Spellbooks become really good again, so there's something there, but it's hard to make it work. I think it's too clunky.
Yeah. The last SR is Scrap Storm, which is a quick play spell. It reads, target one scrap monster you control, semicolon. Send one scrap monster from your deck to your graveyard, then draw one card, and then destroy that monster. referring to the one before the semicolon. So yet again, with a little bit of the weird Yu-Gi-Oh wording, I think the intent here is that if your target misses, then the rest fizzles. Anyway, so this kind of works with the scrap theme, where the whole point is that you get rid of, we saw it with the dragon, the synchro dragon, you get rid of one of your guys, your pieces of scrap, and then you get an effect. This one, the way the order of the effects works is that you get to pick one from your deck and put it into your graveyard first, and then you draw a card, and then you destroy a monster. So you guarantee that you get the one you want in your graveyard, and then you recoup a little bit of your card disadvantage, and then you get to destroy. And I say get to because there's certain, like, some reasons why you'd want to. Some of them have, like, when it dies effects. Some of them have effects when they're in the graveyard, so it makes a little bit of sense there. Also, since it's a quick play, you can play it not so much like because you specifically want your guy to die, but because it was going to die anyway, so you can, like, instead you could destroy it yourself and get a little bit of an advantage. It kind of feels like it's supposed to be like a tutor effect or engine. I see a little bit of synergy within the rest of the box with Morphtronic Remotin, which is a rare, but overall I don't like the archetype very much. And I don't think that this has enough for it to really work as its own, like, as the engine that it's kind of designed to be.
Great. So we're going to go over the remaining archetypes. Do you want to stay on scraps, or do you think you're done there? Or, like, any notable scrap cards?
Yeah, well, one is that they have a card called Lube, which is little... It's a little...
It follows Spunky Jaden well.
So that's notable. Yeah. I think I pretty much covered everything. They do have a 4-star 1700 attack synchro monster, which is stronger than most of the other synchros, if I recall. I forget what our last biggest was. I don't know if this is the biggest or not, but it's at least, semi-competitive. So that's maybe notable, even if you don't care about scraps. There's also one card, the Scrap Searcher, which is an N. Let me find him real quick. It's a 1-star winged beast. When a scrap monster you control except Scrap Searcher is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card from your graveyard. When this card is special summoned, destroy all face-up monsters you control except scrap monsters. So there were a couple cards that allowed you to special summon a scrap monster to either player's side of the board. And I think I'm reading this to be you can special summon it to your opponent's side of the board and destroy their board, which would be kind of cool and clever. I don't think, like, it's like tricky and fun, but I think even if it works like how I'm reading it, I don't think that it's strong enough to be like a meta deck, but it's kind of like a fun thing you might want to play with. So I think that's kind of the coolest thing that scraps are doing, besides the one scrap that I think is actually good is... Or no, he's a Morphtronic anyway. Never mind. I don't like the scraps.
All right, Morphtronics.
Morphtronics, yes. Pretty much said everything I wanted to do about the Morphtronics. They're also not particularly exciting. The one Morphtronic that I wanted to talk about was the one that I was saying before, is the Scopin, who's the tuner that can kind of set up his own synchro summon, so all on his own. That's kind of the best one, and it requires you to play another one just so that it has something to summon. So that's not great, but it might possibly be worth it.
You also have the double tools C and D in this deck too, which is... we talked about it way back, but it's a pretty good equip spell.
Sweet.
Alright. The Vylons. They released some Vylons in a previous set, and as mentioned before, Epsilon combos with Segment. There's a less good Vylon, Synchro and Sigma. It's not that good, but it's a extra deck card, so you could just put it in anyways, in case it works. There's Vylon Cube, the tuner, If it's sent to the graveyard for the synchro summon of a light monster, you can add an equipped spell from your deck to your hand. So this ensures that you can get an equipped spell for your Epsilon right away. That works fine. Stella, I'm not that high on. Element. Okay, so there's another broken thing here. There's a continuous spell called Violon Element. Continuous spell. When any face-up Violon equipped cards you control are destroyed, except during the damage step, you can special summon an equal or lower number of Violon tuners from your deck. They cannot be used as synchro materials except for the synchro of a Violon synchro. So what you do is combine this with the Rod of Chaos. Rod of Silence Chaos. The equipped monster gains 500 defense. Negate other spell effects that target the equipped monster. If you do, destroy that spell card. So you equip this to a monster that has equipped spells. You destroy them, and then you get to special summon as many tuners as possible from your deck with Violon Element. So that's another combo thing that you could do.
Yeah. It's cool. So you were talking about how the Violons are kind of like the archetype for this set.
I think so. Just if you can abuse the Epsilon plus segment, and it's pretty easy with the cube because you just search for the segment right away. And it's just 8-star synchro. Cube is 3, so you need 5 stars of other material to get on the board. So it depends how good the other Violons are. The regular monsters, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. The only other card that I specifically wanted to talk about was Desynchro. Yeah. Where'd it go? It is...
The stars, yeah.
It's a rare spell. Target one synchro monster on the field. Return that target to the extra deck. Then, if all of the monsters that were used for the synchro summon of that monster are in your graveyard, you can special summon all of them. So I thought this was really cool because there's a couple synchros that seem to get their value from they come into play and they have an effect, or they have an effect you can only use once per turn, but maybe the stats aren't quite as strong. So maybe you can use this as you synchro summon, and then you unsynchro summon, or you synchro summon, get the effect, unsynchro summon. I think you could just re-synchro summon it again if you want to get the effect again. So this could be read as kind of like just reset all of your various effects, especially if the things that you are using as your materials also have their own effects. So there's some really cool potential there. If this were a quick play, I think it'd be crazy strong because then you could attack and get extra attacks in and stuff.
It's like Defusion, that card.
Yes. Yeah, it's like Defusion, obviously, a very strong parallel there. But I think there's some value to it, or at least some consideration that there might be some value to it at some point.
I mentioned the Rod of Silence Chaos. That can that usually goes on an opponent's monster, but it could also make anything immune to let's say aliens come back and they have that A cell that prevents them from getting hit by the A cell, prevents enemy controller. And then the Guardian Chaos herself, it might be useful for farming. It's a card that comes onto the board, and then you could use Spirit Barrier, and that's some new farming thing probably, because they hit you directly and it doesn't hurt. So
there you go.
There you go. It's a water monster, so you could Sea Serpent. So you could maybe there's something there for water decks. I'm not high on the windups. There's only a couple of them, and they're not too impressive to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we've seen one or two of the windups.
Yeah, there's a psychic windup or something. Juggler, yeah.
Yeah, right. That sounds. And I think the Juggler was actually maybe
better. It was okay. It was okay.
Yeah. I remembered that. So this, I don't know. These guys aren't super great.
Right. Okay. So this box is coming on Monday. It's just a mini box. I might buy it. I think. Well, I don't know. I still haven't bought the Blue Eyes set yet. Yeah,
me neither. I don't have a ton of gems because I've been slacking, I guess. So we'll see where I'm at. This box doesn't seem super impressive to me, but it really feels like every time I'm excited about a box, it ends up falling flat, and then every time I'm not excited, I end up being wrong, and it ends up defining the meta for a couple months. So I'm not sure now. I'm kind of questioning everything.
I might just go for the Vylons. I still have a ton of gems, so I might do it.
Yeah, that might be worth it.
All right. So we're going to wrap up with the upcoming news. Tetsu Trudge will be available next week, most likely. Special character in November, and finally the KC Cup going on November 13 to 25. You have to get to Legend this month. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll finally play some games, hopefully, and, maybe get to Legend. I did note, I just saw it, October 25th is Seto Kaiba's birthday. So, I wonder if they'll do something in this upcoming week, a secret birthday, gift or something.
Yeah, it's going to be like a mat and how many gems that is equal to something, yeah.
Some sort of gem reward, maybe. I don't know.
I was rich,
but that'd be cool. Yeah, exactly. He's rich. He should give us a lot of gems for his birthday.
That's hilarious. So that is it for us today. Thank you very much for listening. Find our podcast by searching the Duel Assessment on anything, including Spotify. Check out the podcast and more at our website, theduelassessment.wordpress.com, Facebook, facebook.com/theduelassessment. If you want to help fund our work, patreon.com/duel_assessment. Email us with any questions at theduelassessment@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter, duel_assessment, me at GreenRanger, CCG, DeckTech at HS DeckTech.
Yep, we'll catch you guys there.